Hi everybody, it's Belinda Maston from the MIA room in Jeremy Ranch Elementary School. We're doing the clay chicks today. They are in second grade and they look like this. So I guess the first thing you need to know is I highly suggest that you get your clay ready before you start. My recommendation is to go ahead and cut your clay probably 2 mil deep and cut it in half. That I'm hoping will be enough clay for you. It should mash down to a nice sized tennis ball, and then I would have those prepped up and ready to go. And so you just cover them with a piece of plastic and have them ready for the class. So if you have 26 kids, get 26 balls done and ready. Then at the end, you may need to just allow for this much clay, probably the size of a cutie, for extra pieces to add on to your clay chick. So I'm just going to go put that back. It doesn't dry out. And always use your little clippy so it doesn't, and make sure there's no air in it before you seal it up. So you have something about this size, and go ahead and let the kids wedge it by throwing it down on the table. Again, this clay is very forgiving, so you don't have to wedge it like a normal piece of clay. The goal is to just get it very smooth. So all the kids have to do is tap it with their palms of their hands until it's nice and round. It might take them a little while because their hands are a lot smaller than mine, and then just get them to smooth with their thumb any wrinkles that are in the clay. Just like that. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but just it might take them a little while to do this, so be patient with them. Okay, so the goal is to get their little thumbs in the middle of it, like this. They push down, they create a pit in the middle, something like that. Make sure they don't go all the way through. They need to allow for a little bit of space at the bottom. So make sure it just, if they push it all the way through, get them to start again. It's not a big deal. And then they just grab it and they rotate it around like this. Now the goal is to do it until it's kind of about 2 mil thick. The walls are 2 mil thick and the bottom is quite thinner too. Now if they have it something like this is too thick. This will take at least 2 weeks to dry. The thing is, something this thick is going to crack. You need to cover it with a piece of plastic. If you have something like this, we could get away with maybe not covering it with a piece of plastic, and it will dry a lot faster, allowing you to bisque fire it quicker. And so if we see something like this when we're going to fire it, it's just going to take a long time. So be aware of that when the kids are making their pots, that they don't want them to be too thick, but not too thin either. Pieces like this would probably take about 10 days to dry completely, sometimes a little less, depending on the piece. So that's your chick right there. And now we're going to add the pieces to it. Now with these chicks, they have these really cute feathers, and obviously you put them on after a bisque fire. So with the feathers, you need to create some holes. You need to create holes for the feet, and you can use this stick here to put the holes right in there. Now if you just use the thickness of this, you'll find that that will close over and you'll have no hole, because as you know, all clay shrinks in the kiln. So if you just poke a hole in it like this, the holes may close over. So just go ahead and get the kids to give them a little rotation on either side, making that hole probably double in size. So that's for the actual feet. And then you would have another one for the wings. One on this side, then one on this side. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. It's kind of cute when they're off center. It doesn't really matter, whatever the kids do, and just get them to rotate it. Make sure it's not too big because then the feathers won't stay in. So I think that looks pretty good. That's how big you want the holes to be. Make sure there's no pieces stuck in there at all. And then you can go ahead. So these are your wings. So now some people don't want to do wings like this. They prefer to put them on. The kids they can put clay wings on or they can put feather wings on. It's their choice. And these are for the legs. So they will need the legs, but this is optional. Also, some kids will do a top feather and they need to put a hole right in the middle. Same size as all the others. And then they just have that one there. Then at this point I would get them to turn it over and just check the holes and smooth them out. Once they're all smoothed out, then go ahead and get the child to write their name very clearly. You need to be able to read it on either the inside or on the base. I like to put it on the inside, like this. I don't know if you can see that. Just something like that.
Bring it a little closer again.
And then I would go ahead and put the grade and the teacher in there as well. So if it's second grade Hanson, just write it in there. Now you can go ahead and do that later. The parent volunteers can go ahead and do that later so it's nice and clear. It makes it really easy for you as a parent to keep track of everything, knowing that once it's fired, all pieces look the same, and if you've got 4 classes all doing chicks at one time, you don't know whose chicks are whose. So go ahead and write it in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, I think I might make the wings. So if you want to create little wings and stick them on, you can. Now if anyone is doing a slipping and scoring method, which means they need to stick something onto the piece of clay, we have these really handy dandy squirt bottles that have vinegar in them. So if you give them a little squirt, it works very well like a slip. It breaks down the molecules of the clay and it makes it really easy for it to stick. So I always use the term wet, wiggle, twist and stick. So wet it, wiggle it, twist and stick, and it should stick on. So get them to hold it and pull it, and if it stays put, you know that it's not going to fall off when they go to fire it. So you can go ahead. Now this is if the children choose not to use the feathers. If they want to create their own wings, they can go ahead and make their own wings. It doesn't have to be a certain look. It can be whatever they want. So wet, wiggle, twist and stick. And there you have it. I think I got that off a lady on YouTube who is phenomenal. She is a guru, and I think that's her terms and that's what she uses, and I love it. And the kids like it too. You can make a little song and dance out of it if you want. All right, so there's your chick. And that's pretty much it. Now, it goes, you can put the beaks on. I'll go ahead and put an eyeball on so you can get a gist of what I'm doing here. There's one eyeball. Some people like this shape. Some kids like the eyes that stick out. Now, if you go and put the eyes that stick out, make sure that it's no bigger than a grape, because if it's bigger than a grape, it'll explode. If it's a solid piece of clay in the kiln, it'll just blow, and they'll have no eyeball. It'll be very strange indeed. So go ahead and stick that one on too. They're 2 different styles of eyes. And then I always like to go ahead and you can either put another piece of clay on the top, or you could just stick a hole in it like that to give it the impression that it's an eyeball, which is really cute. And then you've got your eyeballs. Now, one thing you do need to do is put a chick, like a little beak on. So this is one that I just pre-made, but they can make any style they want. I like to put a little line there so it looks like they've got a little, their mouth, their little beak can open up. And you should really only need a scratch tool, the clay and this, and get them to cover up their clay with their wet rag. Wet rags are fantastic. They're good for cleaning tables. They're good for keeping clay wet. So, because they may take a lot longer than what I'm doing right here. Make sure it's a wet wiggle, twist and stick. There's enough vinegar on one, just from one spray is enough. So wet wiggle, twist and stick. And if it's not sticking, then you know you've got to keep wiggling it. Maybe you might want to do it further down. Ta-da! And then I'd go ahead and put the line back in for the mouth. So they should have eyes, beaks, wings, and a name on it. And there you go. Now I would, if you want to, you can create these little feet. You use a little bit of piping when it's actually been bisque fired. And then you create a little hole in here, just the same size as all the other holes. And you can, I normally like to feed this through both sides. And obviously after this has been bisque fired, this can't be done on greenware. So right now this is a piece of greenware. You don't do this now. You do this after it's been bisque fired. So make sure you get this particular project bisque fired first. And then they can put these little feet in like that. And it looks really cute because it dangles. And you can tie it off any way you like. So that's super cute. Another option is you can just do it just with the pipe for the kids that don't make feet. Now make sure that their name goes on the feet, because if the name isn't on the feet, then you've got how many pairs of feet? 67 pairs or 66 pairs of feet, and you don't know who they belong to. So make sure they have their name on there. You may have to write it on there for them because it's really hard because it's a tiny piece of clay. And make sure that the piece goes right next to the chick so it doesn't get lost in the kiln room. Okay, and then, yeah, so remember, don't do that unless it's been bisque fired first. I highly recommend bisque firing them, which means it comes back in a state that looks something like this. This clay goes white when it's been bisque fired. It's this color and it's really fragile and it looks like that. So if you, once this has been bisque fired, you can go ahead and use a stroke and coat, which is a glaze, which is really good. Solid colours tend to be stroke and coat. And then the body of the chick, the kids can go ahead and paint them with the Jungle Gyms. Now if they go ahead and paint them, always remember that you must have no glaze at the bottom. That is your responsibility as a volunteer to make sure there is no glaze on that bottom of that chick. And then you can go ahead, once it's been bisque fired and it's in that white state like this, you can go ahead, find the wax resist, make sure it's shook up really good. You'll find that in the lower clay cabinet. And you can use this sponge. These little sponges we'll have available. They'll be down there with the wax. You can tap it on there, and what happens is you do that before they go ahead and do any glazing at all. So do this process when it's in this state before you go and enter into the classroom to get them to paint the glaze on. So get them to put it on like this, and then the kids can go ahead and paint their glaze on. Have fun. It's a great project.